Yes, we are. Thank you very much, though, Em. So yes, Trump he's going. His trade war with China didn't work, so he's going to have one with the EU. So he says. But I'm just going to put up what he said. Actually, well, we'll put up what he said. Someone's just asked there about the chicken. Did we used to import US chicken? I remember yellow chicken from being fed on sweet corn 80s or 90s. I don't. I we can import US chicken now as long as it meets certain standards. Now, I don't know that we really do. But I also don't really know how widespread the low standard chicken factories are in America. Like, there are some saying they're sort of phasing it out anyway. I don't know. But it is possible that standards went up after the 80s and 90s. I don't know. I don't remember. I probably didn't. I probably never knew. I say I don't remember. That's probably a lie. I probably never knew, in all honesty. But let's just have a quick look at what Trump is going on about. Where's he got? Where is it? Oh, there he is. There it is. So I'll read it out to you. I'll read out his tweet, and then below it, I've picked out, because his tweet, his Truth Social tweet. He has. I've identified 5 things he's complaining about. Okay, because there's a lot of garble stuff in there, but I'll read the whole post first. So he says, the European Union, which was formed for the primary purpose of taking advantage of the United States on trade. No, it wasn't. It was formed primarily to achieve peace between the major powers of Europe, who had been at war with one another on an almost non-stop basis for basically 2,000 years. So, yeah, it was actually designed to bring peace at last after the Second World War through shared prosperity. The idea being you're not going to go to war with someone upon whose trade you depend. And we see this in the modern world. We see it around the world, don't you? You tend not to start wars with someone upon whom you're economically dependent. You go and fight someone else somewhere else. Anyway, it says, has been very difficult to deal with, I'll bet. They're powerful trade barriers. So what are these trade barriers, Donald? VAT taxes. We'll ignore the tautology. That doesn't matter. Ridiculous corporate penalties. Non-monetary trade barriers. Monetary manipulations. Unfair and unjustified lawsuits against American companies. And more. He doesn't say what the more is, right? So I've just got to stick with that. Have led to a trade deficit with the US of more than $250 million a year. He can't just mean that, can he? Is that all it? That's wrong, isn't it? Am I being stupid? That says $250 million. Is he really having a flap about $250 million? He's not, is he? He's got something wrong there. Am I doing a Pretty Patel? Am I a bit sleep deprived? Someone tell me. That says $250 million. That does say 250 million. He must have written that down wrong, because you're not going to have a flap about $250 million. He must mean, I don't know what he means. Does anyone know what he means? He has got the, Finn's saying he's got the figure. He must have got the figure wrong, because that would be ridiculous. You don't start a trade war over $250 million. Anyway, he must mean $250 billion, I guess, doesn't he? A number which is totally unacceptable. Our discussions with them are going nowhere. Therefore, I am recommending a straight 50%. He actually spelt recommending correctly. Let's give him some kudos, shall we? He's actually spelt it right. I wonder if it was him that wrote it. Anyway, I'm recommending a straight 50% tariff on the European Union starting on June the 1st, 2025. So he set the date. And there is no tariff if the product is built or manufactured in the United States. It should be obvious that, isn't it? You're not importing it if it's built or manufactured in the United States. Thank you for your attention on this matter. What a pointless thing to say at the end there. Oh, there won't be any tariffs on EU products if they're American products. Like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Anyway, Derek's there assuring us that it's $235 billion. I see. Okay, that makes more sense. Man's an idiot. Anyway, I just had to check I wasn't being an idiot, because that would be embarrassing. Right, so should we go down them? should we go down this list of things he has a grievance with? First of all, because at the end of the day, two things to pick out here. First of all, he's set this date for when the tariffs are going to apply, but he's done that before multiple times. And then basically, put it this way, I don't think anyone is going to have a heart attack from surprise if by June the 1st these tariffs don't get applied. Should we put it that way? I'm not saying they definitely won't get applied, because he is insane, right? But it would not be a surprise if they were not. Okay? So he may just be saying it just to get a reaction from the EU, to get the EU to go, oh no, 50%, no, we'll behave, we'll promise. And the other thing to note is he says, I am recommending a straight 50% tariff. Right? And again, I said this in the video today, but like, he's recommending. To whom is he recommending this? Because he's set the date. And it's not like Congress has to action it. It's not like he's saying to Congress, can you do this for me, right? Because he's already applied tariffs without going through Congress. And the idea that Congress would pass something like this in time for June the 1st is ridiculous anyway. So let's go through these 5 things that I distilled from his complaints. First of all, VAT on imports. Yes, the EU applies VAT on imports. The UK applies VAT on imports. The United States does as well. VAT, for those who don't know, it's value-added tax. It's just a sales tax. So America has sales tax as well. Now, it might be that they are applied on imports through different mechanisms, because I appreciate that in America, sales tax is added at the till. So I've been to America. When you go to a shop, the price you see on the thing saying, oh, this costs $2.99. You're not paying $2.99, you're paying $2.99 plus whatever the sales tax in that state is. Now, I don't know the details of how the United States applies it on imports. I know that they are applied on imports, however, I have looked that up. It might well be that American sales tax is not, someone maybe in the chat knows, it's possible that the sales tax is not added at the point of import, as it goes through customs, in other words, because it will be added on when it's sold. I don't know. I actually don't know that. Whereas in Europe, sales tax is included. What's the difference between sales tax and VAT? None at all. We just call it VAT, that's all. It's a sales tax. It's just that in Europe, the price that, when you're looking on the shelf, the price on the shelf includes it, unlike in America. In America, it's added on at the till. In Europe, it's not. It's included. So the price, when you're quoted a price, that is the price you pay, which is why it can get quite confusing if ever you have to, for example, use legal services or some other service, not financial services because they don't pay it for some reason. But for example, when I've had to use solicitors in the past, and they'll send you a bill, and they go, oh, that's what it's cost. So that's expensive. And then you find out that doesn't even include the VAT. You're supposed to add that on yourself, which when you come from a country where you're used to sales tax being included in the price is awkward. So America does the same thing. America applies sales taxes. I don't know whether it applies it in a different way, different mechanism, but they still get applied. So EU imports into America also get hit with what we would call VAT. Can the EU stop buying US LNG as leverage? Well, no. See, the EU needs to buy more of it, in all honesty. Because, excuse me, so the EU, in fact, this is actually some leverage Trump effectively does have. If he's got anyone with any brains in his team, he will know that the EU needs to buy more LNG from America. And the reason is the EU has basically set a date for when all EU states have to stop importing gas from Russia. Because at the moment, you would think there's some sort of major trade block between the EU and Russia. There's a lot of trade still going on. And there's not as much as it used to be the case, but there is still a fair amount for some countries in particular, particularly the ones who don't really care about Russia. There's still a trade in gas. So the EU In fact, that's actually one of the ways the EU have actually been cunning and gotten their sanctions past Hungary, because the likes of Hungary, of course, very pro, well, I know Hungary necessarily isn't, but the Hungarian government, Orban's government, very pro-Russia. So, and to apply sanctions to Russia basically needs unanimous agreement. And this is an awful ball ache when Orban keeps tripping everything up. So what the EU have done instead is they've instead of doing it as a formal sanction, they've just done it through standards. So they're basically saying, right, you can't import any Russian gas. So that's applying a sanction, but in a way that doesn't need unanimous agreement in the EU Council. It just needs majority agreement in the EU Parliament. So, yeah, so, and Europe, of course, needs the gas. Where's it going to get it from? We get some LNG from India, but we all know that the gas that India uses comes from Russia. So we're sort of still buying Russian gas if we get it from India. So actually, yeah, we need, I say we, unfortunately, it's not we anymore. The EU, sorry, needs to actually increase the amount of LNG it buys from America. And again, if Trump's got anyone with any brains in his team, he knows that. So I don't think that the EU have got much leverage on that one. But anyway, that's the VAT one. Corporate penalties. Now, corporate penalties could be all sorts of things, I guess. I would assume, because the problem is he doesn't really explain himself. I would assume that corporate penalties means like breaking up monopolies when they get too big. It could mean all sorts of things. It could mean tax. I mean, someone like Donald Trump might see tax as a penalty, a trade penalty. I don't know. Chris, they're saying VAT is supposed to apply to luxury items, so I fail to see how they can apply VAT to energy bills. Certainly isn't luxury. Well, that's how it started. It's not how it is now. It's a bit like national insurance. National insurance began, as the name suggests, as a fund to fund basically the state pension and the NHS. But that's not, it's just another form of taxation now. The national insurance is now just a form of income tax that pensioners get away with. Which is why, I mean, you know, even the Conservatives, before they lost power last year, in 2023, Jeremy Hunt floated the idea, and Rishi Sunak, of course, of getting rid of national insurance. So the idea would be you would just get rid of it and just fold it into... in fact, that's an interesting point. Fold it into income tax. And Labour went on that. They were going, so you would increase taxes on pensions, because that's what would happen. Because in national insurance at the moment is an income tax that pensioners don't pay. Everyone else pays it. If you're of working age, you pay it. But if you're above the state pension, even if you're working, you do not pay national insurance. So it's basically a tax for which pensioners get exemption. So if you get rid of it, and there's good economic arguments, by the way, to get rid of it. If you get rid of it and you increase income tax to compensate, most working people would end up paying less, but pensioners would end up paying more. Not all I mean, the pensioners just on the basic state pension probably wouldn't, because again, there's like a threshold there as well, but you know. So there we go. Sorry, Punate, I haven't checked yet, no. So I've been incredibly busy trying to get ready for my London trip. I'm away for literally like 3 days. So given I work every day, this is taking some time. So corporate penalties, I'm just going to assume means breaking up monopolies. But America do that as well. It could mean something else, but I really don't know. And I also don't know that the EU have any attitude towards corporations that America also doesn't. So again, this is likely to be something he's just whining about. Monetary manipulations is a funny one. Now, this is something that does happen. It doesn't happen in the EU. It's a way of... So there are times, depending on, you know, how your trade's doing, there are times when it's beneficial for your currency to be weaker, because if your currency is weaker, that helps your exports. And there are times when you want your currency to be stronger, because when your currency is stronger, that helps, you know, with imports. So it's depending on which one you want to like help most with. it is possible for some governments to manipulate their currency. And the way they do this is they either buy or sell their own currency to manipulate the value of it. However, the EU doesn't do this because it can't do it. In the EU has an independent central bank. It's got the European Central Bank. And multiple countries have this. America has an independent central bank, the Federal Reserve. Except, of course, in the case of the EU, it's very difficult for them to even lean on the ECB because of the separation of powers. And also, you can tell that Trump is whining about nothing when it comes to currency manipulation, because there are some governments that do manipulate their currencies in order to help their trade in whichever way they want to help it. And it may well, China may well do that, for example. It's much easier for China to do it. But the way you know that Trump is throwing this in against the EU incorrectly is because his government technically produced a bit of a sheet on the countries they're keeping their eye on when it comes to currency manipulations, right? And it includes Germany. Now, many of you can probably spot the small flaw in that. Now, Germany did used to engage in currency manipulation many, many years ago. But as anyone who is in Europe in the chat will know, Germany cannot possibly manipulate its currency these days because it doesn't have one. Germany doesn't have it. So the Deutschmark went, 2.5 decades ago. So, the fact that an up-to-date list of countries that America is keeping its eye on with regards currency manipulation includes Germany tells you that Trump is yet again 40 years out of date here. So that's a nonsense as well. So again, what I'm trying to get across here is if Trump is trying to generate movement on any of these areas, he's in for a bad time, like VAT on imports. America charges sales tax on their imports. Corporate penalties. I mean, again, the EU are not going to allow massive American monopolies, or indeed any monopolies, to become too powerful. Even America doesn't. Even in America, there is talk, some people may know more than me, about splitting up like Google and YouTube, for example. But that same discussion is also happening in Europe. Monetary manipulations doesn't happen it does happen. It's a thing, but not really in the EU because there's no real way to do it. Lawsuits, I've characterized it as lawsuits against tech bullies. He characterized it as unfair and unjustified lawsuits against American companies. I mean, the thing about a lawsuit is it doesn't work unless you've broken the law, because the judges are also independent. So yeah, there's no big deal with large American companies going to court if they win, because they're fine. It's if they don't win that's the problem. If it was unfair and unjustified, the American company would win and then recoup some legal costs, right? So I suspect what he's talking about here is the likes of Facebook and Musk's Twitter X thing being taken to court. And it's like, well, we have the rule of law in Europe, so again, tough. And even America do that. They're not going to do it for some of Trump's mates these days, but they do that. Alec, they're saying he means fines against naughty American companies, which the US let companies get away with. Well, they don't always. I mean, remember, they fined Facebook. And this was while Trump was in the White House the first time round. They fined Facebook something like $5 billion, didn't they, over the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And admittedly, a lot of people felt that was getting away lightly, which showed the scale of the scandal, that you can get fined $5 billion and you got away lightly. That was being let off with a warning. Just to highlight how instrumental Facebook ended up being in the 2016 presidential election, as well as, of course, the Brexit referendum, although they weren't fined for that. Get rid of national insurance completely, increase income tax to compensate or make pensioners pay national insurance if they have income over the threshold. Well, see, this is where your problem is. So, okay, I didn't actually finish that thought, did I, on the national insurance thing? Sorry, got distracted. So at the time so this is 2023 when they first started floating it, Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak, Labour was straight on it. Labour was straight on it because it represented, like, you couldn't just get rid of national insurance and not replace it with anything, because that's over £40 billion a year, right? So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to fold it into income tax? Of course you're going to fold it into income tax. So Labour were basically trying to get Sunak or Hunt to say, yeah, we're going to make pensioners pay more tax, because that's what it would mean. Now, here's an interesting dynamic. So in 2023, and this carried on to 2024. So should we say in the first half of 2024, Labour were aware what a political hot potato it would be to make pensioners pay extra income tax. Because that's what would have to happen. You'd have to get pensioners to pay extra income tax. Now, it wouldn't affect the poorest pensioners, because they don't meet the threshold to pay income. I mean, some have now, but most do not even now meet the threshold. So we'd be talking about people who have the state pension plus some other income as well, like private pension or something else, right? So, but nonetheless, Labour at that time understood what a political hot potato it would be to do that, even if it makes economic sense. So isn't it remarkable that just a few months later, they did the same thing with the winter fuel allowance? And for some of those pensioners, you know, it probably would have only been an extra 200 quid in the income tax, it might have been. So it's remarkable, isn't it? How the same party, and it just shows you how something must have changed in the thinking with Labour. It just showed you how something changed, because first half of 2024, they understood that charging pensioners more would be a politically stupid idea, because they really tried to hammer the Tories over it. A few months after winning the election, like literally, what was it? Because they announced it in summer, didn't they? It was like weeks, a matter of weeks after winning the election. It's like they took their brains out and went, oh, yeah, we can totally take money off pensioners. Anyway, never mind. Never mind. They seem to be trying to rein back on it a little bit. What's the next one? Oh, the lawsuits against the tech bullies. Yeah, again, you know, like, he's not going to get anywhere with that. He's not going to get anywhere. Then he says non-monetary trade barriers, by which I think he means standards. I think he means standards. Why won't you buy our shit? Because it's shit. Like, that's the thing. You know, standards are like and I said it this morning, they're the easiest trade barriers to get over. All you have to do, like, there's no issue with high quality American stuff. You know, like I said earlier, if there are American farmers and factories that are producing chicken to high standards of hygiene, as high as you can get when it's chicken at the end of the day, chicken is horrible. I mean, in terms of like, as a, that's why you have to be so careful with it though, because it's not actually possible for chicken to actually be safe. You cannot actually produce chicken, raw chicken, that is safe in any way or shape or form. So you have to really do your best. And this is why, you know, this is why you have what was I saying now? Like, you have things like, you know, don't wash chicken under the tap and stuff like that, because the droplets splash and they go basically everywhere. But anyway, Chris C there saying, I'm sorry, Phil, but pensioners are the biggest users of public services like free prescriptions, free hearing aids, etc. Why should they expect the current working generation to pay for them? Because they vote. It's really that simple. It's not. No one's trying to argue that it's fair. No one's trying to argue that it's fair. I mean, some people will. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, fair is a subjective concept anyway. What is fair? I mean, you can probably imagine some scenarios where there is an objective statement of fairness, I guess. But when it comes, in most real life situations, when it comes to a matter of fairness, there's always two sides to it, at least, isn't there? So you can argue. I mean, some people will argue, well, you've worked all your life, So you decide you deserve a few perks or something like that. Or you might say because the state pension's so crap in this country, you know, so whatever it is, but it makes no difference. Doesn't matter whether it's fair or not. It's irrelevant. They vote. They vote. You know, if you, no party, like Labour is usually used to not getting the majority of elderly votes, but it still needs them. It can't have none. Otherwise it will never win. They're just too large a voting bloc. It's not that they exist in massive numbers, though. I mean, the interesting thing is, I think there are more, well, certainly, if you were to say, because at the next election, remember, 16 and 17-year-olds get the vote as well. So if you say, I'm going to actually find the maths on this, but I would certainly say at the next election, there will be more. I'm going to find this. I might be talking rubbish here. I need to find this out. I'm going to suggest, though, I've got an inkling that there might well be more people eligible to vote under the age of 30, from 16 to 30 in the UK, than there are pensioners. It's just that pensioners vote in greater numbers, right? So let's see. Google AI, how good is it? Oh, not bad, not bad. 12 million people, 2023, that'll do. Oh, it's about the same though. So, oh no, it's not. No, it's not. I'm just looking at a number here. It says there were approximately 13.15 million people, but that's age 65 or older. Now in 2023 but now we're talking 67 really, aren't we? Or we will be talking 60. But I know it's 66. 66 is pension age. That's, but either way, that's about the same, because if it's, pension age, it used to be 65. It's now 66, isn't it? And it will be. I keep thinking 67 because that's what it'll be when I'm retired. If I ever retire. Am I allowed to retire? I don't know if I'm allowed. But yeah, so you're talking about the same number. But the pensioners vote in greater proportion. So there's more of them. They're worth more votes. And I'll tell you another thing about... So there's two key differences from an electoral strategy perspective between younger voters, who in this case I will define as being up to 30, and pension voters. So pension voters are first of all voting in larger numbers, so straight away there's more votes available. Secondly, they're also a bigger share of votes specifically in marginal constituencies. A lot of younger people tend to be concentrated in the cities, more so than pensioners. Right? So it's also where they are. And actually a third thing, now that I come to it, is pensioners are also more likely to swing between the realistic options, whereas young people may vote more ideologically. Not necessarily. I mean, I don't have the stats, by the way, on how different ages are likely to have voted tactically at the last election, but in elections in general, young people are much more likely to vote with their heart, as Josh from Movement Forward often describes it. But anyway, 66 pension age this year, going up to 67. Oh, is it going to 67 next year? Okay. Pretty sure at least 68 by the time you get filled. No, well, it could be in theory, yeah. There has been no announcement that it's going beyond 67, and we know it will at some point. But they have to give a few years' notice. I mean, ultimately, remember, the issue with the WASPy women was that they felt they didn't get enough notice. Now, yes, okay, there's still what? I'm like 49 now. So there's still another 18 years. They don't need to give 18 years notice. So, yeah, I mean, in theory, they could in the next decade announce it. And yes, it will be. Never mind. But at the moment, I work on the principle that it's 67. People tend to get more right wing and whinge more as we get older. Boomers, particularly, and I'm one. Expect to pay tax and want fair assistance for young people and defo not right wing. Well, the thing is, and this is why it's boomers particularly, it's because you used to start benefiting from capitalism, which basically means owning things, doesn't it? Free market. In middle age. And I've said this before, but this really is it. And this is why, you know, the Conservatives, they're buggered in so many ways. I would do a comprehensive video on it if I felt it was worth my while, but I don't see it is, because there's so many other ways in which they're irrelevant now. But from the Conservatives' point of view, because people struggle to get on the housing ladder, ironically they need Labour to help them there, but they won't be able to do it in just 5 years. Because they struggle to get on the housing ladder, it used to be the case, you're young, right? You're going to struggle. Of course you struggle. Everyone struggles. You leave, unless you've got rich parents who also like shove your pockets full of money and buy your first house or whatever. If you've got to do it on your own, even if you've got supportive parents who let you live at home while you save up, however it works, if you have to do it on your own, it's now in like most parts of the country. There are parts of the north of England and so on where it's still, you can still get a mortgage on on anything, even actually minimum wage, quite frankly, in some places. Some places housing's still cheap. But if we're talking about where most people live, around the cities or in the south of England, you're not getting onto the housing ladder if you're having to do it on your own efforts, unless you come from a decent background and or have a high paying job. You're not getting onto the housing ladder. So you're struggling in your 20s like everyone does, but you're not getting on the housing ladder. So you're still renting when you're in 30s. Well, the cost of rent's gone up, okay? And you're still renting in your 40s, so the cost of rent's gone up even more. So that 40-year-old who managed to get onto the housing ladder when they were 25 they're now 15 years into their mortgage. They've got 10 years left probably, and they've got the cost of repaying that mortgage is way less than the cost of renting a similar house. And every year, but they're assuming they're on some sort of career path, their income will have massively increased. So the percentage that they're spending on housing has diminished over time. Whereas the person renting, the percentage that they're spending on housing has increased because rents have increased out of proportion to wages. So there is no longer that sort of flip that happened in middle age. Doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't exist. Let me just get rid of this for a moment because we seem to have stopped talking about that, but I'm sure we'll come back to it. Adam, they're saying it has been announced, has it? You can use the government website to get a state pension forecast. Mine won't start until 2053 when I turn 68. Oh. I think mine's still... Hold on. I'll have to look later then. Pretty sure mine's still 67 then. I didn't know it had been increased further. Retirement at 65 was because most workers were dead by 65. Yeah, so it was always... The state retirement age was always designed to give you a few years putting your feet up and then that was it. You were expected to pop your clogs quite soon afterwards. Exactly, that is the point. The problem we have now, however, is people are living a lot longer because of medical advancements, largely. We're not a healthier nation, so it's basically medical advancements. However, because we're not a healthier nation, it doesn't necessarily mean you can just keep people working for longer, because people are in ill health, so they can't do a lot of jobs. And even the jobs you could do if you're 70, but not in great health, you're not going to be very productive. So we're actually at a really awkward situation here, where it's not a, you know, you can keep raising it as much as you like, but, you know, some people you'll just increase the number of people who have to retire for ill health. And then what they're going to do? John, they're saying the house they purchased was 4 times the salary. Now it's 9 times. You'd have to go back a long way for it to have been 4 times. But yes, it is. Yes, it is now much harder. I thought it had been decided that anyone born in or after 1978, made the cut, would get state pension at 68, but the 1978 date might be brought forward. Okay, I don't know in that case. All I knew is it's 67. I don't really pay a lot of attention to pension ages, if I'm honest. In 1909, the average life expectancy was 59, pension age was 65. Was it really? Anyway. Standard that building societies refuse to give mortgages to renters who are paying more out on rent than a mortgage. Shocking thing. Well, I mean, it's all based on risk from their point of view, isn't it? So if they give you 100% mortgage, the worry is that you then lose your job and then they're stuck with you, type of thing, for a little while anyway, because it's a hell of a job to evict you. Whereas if you pay a deposit, then there's already equity in the home, which can then compensate them for that unprofitable period between you no longer being able to pay your mortgage and them being able to kick you out and sell the home. I think that is ultimately what it's about. Because, yeah, you're right. If someone can afford to pay rent, they can afford to pay a mortgage. And that sounds like a good deal for the mortgage lender. But they don't know you can afford to pay your rent. They only know that you're paying it right now. They don't know that you won't lose your job and not be able to get another one in a couple of months' time. So that's why they really want, particularly if, banks can afford, and mortgage lenders in general can afford to take a hit. They expect some defaults. It's when the defaults, because there used to be 100% mortgages, but that's when the defaults start to get a bit, when the defaults start to go up too much, that's when they start wanting to make sure that people are paying a hefty deposit, so they know they're going to get their money back. We also don't inform people how pensions work, so the investment's very minimum from it. Many pension pots underperform as a result, which hurts them even further. Well, one of the things that young people should really do now, and I know right now it might sound like a hell of a list, when I sort of had my teacher's pension, although I only paid into it for about 10 years, because when I was very, very young and working in a college where they don't encourage you to do it, I was young and stupid and didn't. But, the teacher's pension's not bad. It's not a bad deal, quite frankly. It's worth way more than in fact, my teacher's pension, and I've only paid in for it for 10 years, is going to pay out more. And when I turn 60 as well, when I turn 60, I get a lump sum, and I get some money as well per year, and tax-free lump sum as well. Very nice. And my wife, who has been paying into her works pension all her life, even when she finishes and retires at 67, we hope, it won't pay out as much as my teacher's pension. I've only paid into the bugger for 10 years. And she's on the same salary as I was when I was a teacher as well. It's not like I was earning more. So but these days, it's really easy to put some money aside into like an investment fund. I mean, you don't play the markets, you don't do anything stupid, but just an investment fund. All banks have an investment fund you can just pay money into, and you can decide the level of risk. So, I mean, I started this year. Now, at the moment, you look at it and it's like I've lost money because Trump is a lunatic, basically. But it's intended to build up another pot of money for my, because I'll have the state pension, I'll have my teacher's pension thing, but those two together are rubbish. You're not living on that very well. I mean, some people have to. Some people have to live just on the state pension, but it's not great. So I'm putting money aside for the other one, and I'm just putting it into an investment fund, with my bank. Yeah, they're saying it works the same as my army pension. See, the reason why the teacher's pension scheme's quite good is because almost every teacher, like something like 97, 98% of teachers are in a union. I mean, that's the trick, really, isn't it? Just be in a bloody union, get more people into a union, and you'll get. Because these are the sort of things that people don't appreciate with unions. You associate unions with going on strike. You might associate unions with, maybe providing some sort of legal protection if you need it, which is actually why so many teachers are unionized, because it's really easy to have a false accusation made against you. You need to be any teacher not in a union must be mad. But the benefits are you get. They also negotiate pay deals, and they also negotiate decent pension rights. Because the reason why the teachers' pension scheme is so good is because there's your contributions into it. It doesn't go through a magical unicorn filter or anything. It's because the school or college also pays into it, and they pay in more than you do. I mean, that's why the teachers' pension scheme's good, because the employer pays more into it than you bloody do. You're paying less than half your contributions. It did used to be fiddled, though. They did change it. It used to be a final salary scheme. So they sort of worked out an average over your last 3 years of service. And then they changed it to an average salary scheme, which I sort of got, because what some teachers would do, they'd work as a teacher all their life. Then all of a sudden, as they were approaching pension age, they'd suddenly go for promotion, get a head of department job for a few years, boost their pay and massively boost their pension, which is a terrible fiddle. I got that, how that was a fiddle. As I say, I'm looking into investing in bonds, other safe investments, because if humanity survives until retirement age, I doubt I'd have a pension left at all, to be honest. You may not, no, indeed, if it's particularly young. I mean, I've put mine into 50-50. So mine's roughly 50% bonds, 50% shares. I do intend to put it mostly into shares. I'm just a bit nervous of doing it right now. I'll just wait till Trump stops being crazy. It may take a while. But then move it more into bonds as I get closer, just to, just to be safer. Will there still be a majority to rejoin if we're forced to join the Euro and Schengen, as well as no rebate on the membership fee? So, I mean, the no rebate on the membership fee, no one's going to make a fuss about that. That's a ridiculous thing. It was nice to have. It's basically, the rebate is something to beat Brexiteers over the head with. That's it. That's all there is to it. At the end of the day, the full membership fee is plenty good value. That is not an issue at all. Schengen is a funny one because, of course, it may well be that there is no great push from the EU for us to join Schengen. Anyway, because that would just create extra... the way I think about that, that would create extra problems if we then had a government that tried to leave again. Because the UK and Ireland have a free travel area, neither Ireland nor the UK are in Schengen. Now, I actually honestly do not know what the Irish view on that is, but if Ireland would be up for it, then okay, that becomes an issue. But if Ireland itself doesn't want to be in Schengen, I actually really honestly don't know. If Ireland itself, then that's easy because it would be like too much hassle. What is Schengen? It's a free travel area, basically. So although you have free movement across the EU, you still have to show stuff. You still have to present yourself at the border, like flash your passport or whatever. Whereas in Schengen, you don't. You just sort of wander around. So, and most EU countries are in Schengen, which basically means you just cross the border. No one hassles you. How many ERG MPs are left in the Tory party? I can't imagine very many. I honestly don't know. It was never very clear how many there were because they didn't have to declare it. Usually the only way we really found out if an MP, a Tory MP, was in the ERG was either if they said so or if they claimed the membership fee back, because then it would be a matter of public record, which is £2,000 a year, or it used to be a few years ago anyway. I was in the middle of something. I've forgotten, haven't I? Oh, the euro. The euro will be the big one, though. The euro will be the big one. I'm not going to lie. That is actually a major issue. And the problem is the way I characterize it is, for me, the best way to take the sting out of the euro issue would be when it's time for a referendum to say we're going to put in law that there will be 2 referenda. The first referendum, and it will be in law, only gives us the authority to negotiate accession. It doesn't give us the authority to join the EU. It just gives us the authority to negotiate accession. Once those accession talks are concluded and the terms are known, then we will put it to a second referendum on whether people accept those terms. And then the government at the time will be able to say, we intend to negotiate an exemption from joining the euro. Now, I honestly don't know how that would go. I can see pros and cons to it. I can see some ways in which maybe the likes of France and Germany might prefer it if we didn't join the euro, because we're likely to be very nosy. We are likely to stick our noses into monetary matters. And it may be that some countries would prefer it if we didn't anyway. And again, and the reason why we will stick our noses in everywhere is because we have the largest financial centre in Europe by far. So it may well be that it does become relatively straightforward to negotiate that exemption and is therefore no big deal. So take the sting out of it by saying the referendum the first referendum is just for accession talks. There will be no joining the EU without a confirmatory referendum once the terms are known, unlike when we left. That'd be the easiest way I would deal with it. And then you just, because accession talks take a few years, even if you're an advanced economy like ours and you can be pretty ready for it fairly quickly, it can still take a few years. Why is there such reluctance for the Exchequer or Downing Street to actually go for Keynesianism? So I can only guess, but my guess would be that they felt the need. Remember, these fiscal rules, they felt they needed them to win the election, to demonstrate, because Labour always has to go above and beyond when it comes to like the fiscal responsibility, because the best lie the Conservatives ever told, the most successful lie they ever told, was getting people to believe that they were good with the economy. So the default public opinion is that the Conservatives are good with the economy and Labour are bad with the economy. The way it was always characterised, and I was very conscious of this when I was growing up being interested in politics, the Conservatives were characterised as being good with the economy but shit with people, whereas Labour cared about people but weren't very good with money. That was the way they were characterised. So Labour have to go above and beyond, so they felt they needed that. It was very similar to Tony Blair and Gordon Brown in the late 90s. The difference there was they got away with it because the economy was growing, so they didn't need to do anything silly. And yet, when it came to the time when they needed to, when the banking crisis arrived, they did. Gordon Brown and Alistair Darling did. But by then, you see, they were already established. Not that it did them any good, they still lost the election. But, they'd proven themselves. Whereas Labour are coming in without having proven themselves. So I think they're wanting to stick to these fiscal rules to demonstrate that they've got this economic discipline. The problem is that it's against all reason. There are very, very few economists who think it's a good idea what they're doing. But that's my speculation. I'm not involved in talks, and I've not heard anything off the record. But that is what I would suggest. They're just worried about losing. Well, at the moment, they don't even have a reputation for economic competence. So, to hell with it, I would say. The best way for them to achieve a reputation for economic competence would be to run the economy well, which means, just accept that there's going to have to be a loose. And it's not like getting rid of all the fiscal rules. It's one fiscal rule which a lot of the public aren't that bothered about, if you explain it to them that, you know, we can't keep cutting, and also just explain to people this fiscal rule is based on the idea of being able to predict down to like 0.1 of a billion pounds, the nearest 100 million pounds, what your economy is going to be doing in 5 years' time. You can't. You know, the idea that Rachel Reeves had to make £5 billion worth of extra cuts, like the margin for error is greater than £5 billion over 5 years. It's mad. Absolutely mad. Not happy that Labour has put their child poverty strategy back to autumn at the earliest. In actual fact, and I know it doesn't seem it, that's actually, and it's causing a lot of anxiety, I get you. That's actually a good thing, because it means that child poverty strategy is going to be better. So the situation we have at the moment, and again, it's a ridiculous situation to have, is Keir Starmer is now, seems to be seized of the idea, according to off-the-record briefings, that they need to do something serious here. They recognise that it would be unpopular not to tackle poverty properly. It would also be very unpopular with their own MPs who are not about it. In fact, there's a report in the Financial Times, basically, again, quoting a load of Labour MPs saying we didn't become Labour MPs to see poverty get worse, right? Particularly child poverty, although I don't see, you know, any poverty is bad enough. But Morgan McSweeney is the one who's going, no, 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 Sodom. He really needs to go. He needs to go. It's getting ridiculous. I actually think he will be gone. I don't see Morgan McSweeney being in his role before the next election. Like, at the moment, like, people keep saying, oh, you need to get rid of Stamina, get rid of Stamina. That'd be a mad situation for all sorts of reasons that people don't consider. But in actual fact, if he sticks with Morgan McSweeney, and Labour MPs may feel no option, because Morgan McSweeney, at the moment, all the people he's advising, I always say, I don't actually know who it is. It may be that Morgan McSweeney himself is not coming up with these ideas. It's his own advisors, and he has chosen poorly who his advisors are. I don't know that. All I know is that Morgan McSweeney is advising Keir Starmer to do stupid stuff, and he needs to stop. I think missed your comment earlier. We'll repost. Yes, thank you. Trump, stop being crazy. He must be having a giraffe. Yes. Well, but at the same time, you know, something has to calm Trump down. He can't actually behave like this for the next 4 years. I remember a Tory friend back in the 70s saying that Tory voters always did better with a Labour government, didn't stop him voting Tory. The thing is, the way it works, I've seen it so many times now. The way it works is Labour fix things. Labour makes sure that the country's working properly. They are actually really good with the economy. Then the Conservatives promise to keep everything that Labour have built, but do it for less money. And that's how it always works. It's how it always works. David Cameron, you know, the way David Cameron won power last time, and even then he didn't do it convincingly, but he still, you know, it was obviously they attacked Labour's handling the banking crisis, even though it earned international acclaim. But he said, you know, this is like the hugger hoodie and, oh yeah, we're totally about low carbon energy. Yeah, brilliant. And, you know, we need to be kind. And when, you know, he and Theresa May were like really about, and Theresa May coined the term the nasty party. So, you know, both of those were instrumental in changing the way people viewed the Conservatives. The Conservatives were basically pretending to care about people. They were under David Cameron right up until 2010. They looked like a socially progressive party in terms of what they were saying. Changed as soon as they came into power, of course, immediately. You know, they just went, oh yeah, forget about that. We've won power now, done. Whoever's at the bottom of the WHP, PIP, and Farage Light strategy needs to go ASAP. Some of the Farage stuff, I mean, some of the stuff on immigration, some of the rhetoric is, some of it has been taken out of context, but other bits of it have not. Yes, because it's not helping them. Some of the immigration policies they are sort of stuck with. because it always used to be the case. The thing is, Labour have two main... Labour's votes come from the left, but there's the liberal left and there's the socially conservative left. And these are usually characterised by the two branches that formed the Labour Party in the first place. A lot of people talk about the unions. They represented working people who were the ones who were actually socially conservative, but of course left-wing economically, by and large. But in actual fact, it's not quite true. The Labour Party was begun by the unions and academics, liberal academics. So you have these two, if you want to, there's lots and lots of types of voter, of course, but if you want to split it into two main types on the left, the liberal left, who tend to be the sort of academics, people who are educated, right? So educated people, liberal attitudes, but left-wing, tend to be concentrated in the cities. Then you've got the working class, low income, not necessarily highly educated, but left-wing still, but socially conservative. And the thing about those is they tend to be concentrated more in the marginal constituencies. So you can see where some of the logic for the social conservatism has come from. Because the liberal left are mostly in the cities, where Labour still feels sort of safe. Again, they will not be safe for very much longer the way things are going, but at the moment they still feel safe there. Because people look at the national poll and go, oh, they're losing loads to the Lib Dems and the Greens, but we don't know where they're losing them because that information isn't publicly available, but Labour will. So it's possible that Labour know that they're losing those votes mostly in the areas where they have large majorities, and that in the under threat seats are the ones where it's the socially conservative ones where the anti-immigration stuff appeals. So you can understand a certain level of it, but at the same time, the votes, whether they're socially conservative or socially liberal, the votes that Labour attract are pragmatic votes. They're not going to win the ideological votes from Reform UK. So that's my argument there. There's no point in trying to ape Reform UK because Reform UK will win. And I wouldn't even keep making a song and dance about immigration because every time Labour say anything about immigration, absolutely guaranteed, journalists will go and ask Nigel Farage what he thinks about it. Or if Nigel Farage is holidaying in France, Richard Tice, right? Whereas if Labour talk about what they're doing with water companies or what they're doing with the NHS or what they're doing with housing, there's a much bigger chance that there's no point in asking Nigel Farage anything because he doesn't have any policies on those things. Jeffrey, they're saying, as a multilingual, I don't like the English fluency stuff, but I can live with it. The Enoch Powell Act's not having it. Well, see, that's where it wasn't really an Enoch Powell Act. People did take that out of context, but that's not me having sympathy for him because if you have to keep explaining what the term meant, and if you listen to the whole thing, it was nothing like Enoch Powell. And in fact, I will point out that this week, in response to a Tory question in the House of Commons, a Labour government minister stood up and reminded that Tory MP that she said that all immigrants, whether they arrive here legally or illegally, are humans and they have human rights. But my argument is, if Labour have to explain themselves for the next 3 days after they say a thing, then they explained it very badly in the first place. So they do need to do better. I see no reason why they couldn't have taken the line Tony Blair took. Tony Blair, when he was coming under fire over some immigration issues, and it always comes down to criminal, the media focus on criminal immigrants. Oh, but this immigrant committed this serious crime and he's still in the country. This is terrible. So Tony Blair came out and did this big speech where he was saying, look, he made a big point about all the benefits we get from immigration, the economic benefits, the social benefits, cultural benefits. He really laid it on thick and then just said, but there are some genuine concerns in isolated cases like this, right? No reason for Starmer not to have done the same, even given that times have changed. Even given that times have changed, because that would still be very much in tune. We know from polling that actually people in Britain are more positive about immigration than during the Brexit referendum, but they're more anti-immigration, which sounds a bit weird. That sounds a bit double Dutch, doesn't it? But it's not. So the broad view is a lot of people in this country are very positive about immigration. We get the benefits of it. We don't want it to stop. We just think it's too high. And why do people think it's too high? Because of those massive numbers that were published in 2023, which have now come down by half. You know, the 2024 figures are half of those in 2023. And they will come down further. So really, what Labour should be doing is they're not matching that public view. They're just going, oh, people are more anti-immigration now. We need to be. It's like, no, they're not anti-immigrant. They're just anti-immigration. They just think their numbers are too high. They don't think there's a problem with having numbers. They don't have a problem with individual immigrants. I've seen lots of seen lots of people in Vox Pops who say they're voting Reform UK who've said that themselves. They say immigration is positive, it's just too high. That's all Labour need to echo. They just need to echo that sentiment, that it got too high under the Tories, you know, uncontrolled immigration, all the rest of it, whatever they like. But just keep emphasising the positive benefit that immigrants, you know, they can say, for example, the only growth we've had over the last 10 years is from immigration. You know, it's incredibly positive influence on our culture, on our economy, and on our communities. But the numbers just got too high. That's all the public want them to say. That's all the public want them to say. And they're getting it wrong. So yeah, there are people, whether it's McSweeney on his own or McSweeney with some other people, there are people in Downing Street who are just getting this badly wrong. Badly wrong. But anyway, it is what it is. Dave there saying, I did listen to Starmer's speech, then compare it to the Powell speech. It's absolutely no comparison. No, there isn't. There was like literally one word that was used that was like in both. It wasn't even the same sentiment. And the thing is there, you could say, oh, was it a bit of dog whistling then? And maybe it was. Maybe it was a bit of clumsy dog whistling. But I would suggest this. Very few people, even at the top of politics, because the Enoch Powell Rivers of Blood speech was decades ago. It was before I was born. So I would suggest that a lot of people, even at the top of politics these days, are probably not intimately familiar with that. They'll be aware of the speech and the tone of the speech and what it was intended to convey, but they won't necessarily be familiar with the language in the speech. At the same time, I still come back to this. If you're going to make a speech that you know is going to be controversial, make it clear. Because if you try to, because sometimes in politics you deliberately don't want to be clear. You try to be ambiguous so that you can appeal to two different audiences. Now, if you try that game, if you're not very good at it, then do not complain when people take what you said out of context. So what I would say is either make your statements clear. If you want to dabble in ambiguity, do not complain when it backfires, because it's not an easy thing to do, particularly with a hostile press. But anyway, there it is. What's the right amount of immigration? It's very difficult to say, but people didn't really have, if you look at polling, it really did spike up, particularly for Labour voters, because obviously they don't, you know, people who are committed Conservative voters, that don't matter to Labour. In terms of Labour voters, it really spiked up after 2023 when so what we had is we had 2 years, 2022 and 2023, of like very, very high, like accelerated net migration figures. So it's not a case of putting a figure on it, because if you try and put a figure on it, the public will put a very low figure on it. But there was no great issue with how it was before, say, Brexit. So about 250,000 net migration, about 250,000. The problem we have is the fact that obviously we cut down on the amount of European migration, which meant we need more people. We've got more people coming in from Africa and Asia. And the other problem is emigration went down. Because, you know, it's net migration. But if the number of people leaving Britain goes down because it's much harder to do it, then, you know, what was a net migration of 250,000 suddenly becomes 300,000. But even that could be fine. Starmer should know that the media will take anything he says in a negative way. Well, more than that, he should know how they will spin it. And he should counter that. The problem is he just doesn't have people with media nous around him. He clearly doesn't have people who understand social media. But he doesn't even have people who understand mainstream media. They're really bad at it. They're incredibly bad. Anyway, we will leave it there. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming on, everyone. Have a great rest of evening. And until next time, I'll see you later.